Hello there. I'm going to do a reaction video. I don't normally do reaction videos very often, but and I didn't want to do a reaction to this because this guy who's called Truth Savior, and he's there to save black music on behalf of all black people, and he has a channel that keeps challenging me. It's very interesting that most of the views that he's got recently, the big views, has come from him reacting to what I'm doing, which to me does seem a little bit like appropriation in a strange way. That's a joke, by the way. He's put another video out on me. I think he's done 3 or 4 now, and I hadn't noticed this one, and so I haven't seen this one. So let's just see what he's saying. I don't even know what it's about. It's obviously I've upset him in some way by having an opinion. Right, let's have a go. Right, so
all right, what's up, fam? I actually have proof that there is an international effort to disassociate black genres from black culture and black.
Right, I've got to go. So look how this guy operates. So it's got a picture of me and it's got a picture of him. I'm assuming that's him. I've got no idea who he is. And I'm positioned in front of, what's that? Is that London Bridge? Or that's Tower Bridge, isn't it, in London? And what the hell's he in front of? Is he in front of like Disneyland? So this is a battle. This is a battle of the countries. It's a battle of the cultures. This is a guy that sees cultures as being at war, right? And you can tell that by the way he talks. He's gone all very James Bond, hasn't he? Because he's saying there's an international plot. Now, I assume what he means by that is that there's some other guy that I don't know who he's on about, or there's some other guy has said something about, I think, hip hop. I saw it on another video that some guy said that, because DJ Kool Herc and African Bambaataa were Jamaican, they weren't not necessarily African American, then, it's a bit difficult for African Americans to claim hip hop as being their music. I have, as far as I know, everybody who's created at the genesis of hip hop was black. If you think of The Last Poets, if you think of DJ Kool Herc, if you think of African Bambaataa, Gil Scott-Heron, they're all black, right? So we can point to that, and this is the whole point. This isn't a war. This is about facts, right? You can point to those guys. They're black. Now, are we going to get all sort of race essentialists and say that no other body from any other race played a part in creating hip hop? Well, that would just be irrational, wouldn't it? It's just, there's no way it couldn't have happened. We don't know how much, but it's all about whether you see the world as divided or you see the world as being together, right? That is the issue here. But to him, there's an international plot because I'm British, as you can tell, because he's stuck the Tower Bridge behind me. And this guy is obviously Puerto Rican or something in some other country. And this is the international plot. I'm sat here with my white pussycat on my lap, working out how I can, steal jazz off the blacks. And then I'm ringing up the arch enemy of this guy that I never even heard of. And, what can we do next? No, this is about facts. It's just about facts. I do not care who has created jazz, right? I have some moral starting points, like, I think it'd be good if the races could get along. I think it's always best to treat things in a colourblind way. I think the idea of races owning art forms is pretty ugly, and I think it leads to separatism. That's where I start. But when it comes to jazz, that's not the only reason why I've stated my claim. The reason why I've been saying what I was saying is because in my 40-year study of jazz history, I've never quite found any proof ever that black musicians solely created jazz, right? Now, I've said over and over that, and I'm going to use the words I've always used, black people did all the heavy lifting. And on this new video, I also stated that the X factor, the essence of jazz, is the African American experience of slavery. Said all that. It's not good enough. What this guy wants is to prove that it is solely black people. That black people sat in New Orleans, and when they heard white people white people doing something, they went like this. No, don't listen to it. Don't let the evil of the white music into us. Yeah, but we've taken half of it off the white people, all the chords and everything. I mean, I'm playing a bloody clarinet here. That's white, isn't it? That does not matter. It's our special essence, So this is where we start, right? It seems absolutely ridiculous. This is just hustling. This is. Let's don't get annoyed. Come on. It hasn't even started yet.
I would not have known this had I not engaged with Andrew Edwards in the UK. But what I found is that there are similarities between Andrew and Dr. Cologne. Both of them, in their perspective, musical interests, are doing whatever they can to strip Black Americans from particular Black genres. We all know Dr. Cologne.
Right. So again, this is absolutely preposterous, right? I am not trying to strip anything of anybody, right? If jazz had been created only by Black people and nobody else had been involved, I would go, yes, call it Black music if you want. Seems a bit silly to do so, But if nobody else was involved, it's Black music. This is motivated by an agenda. Now, this guy, all his arguments on all the other videos start like this. Jazz is Black music. Someone said it's not Black music. Right, so how can he say that? Because jazz is Black music. And what, do you want to have the proof? Well, look, everybody who created it is Black. All the cultural things are Black. And then you go, but they're not. Yeah, but they are, because jazz is Black music. Oh, yeah, so if we're talking about jazz, because it's Black music, then they're the Black bits. Yeah, of course it is, because jazz... So this is like putting the cart before the horse, isn't it? Absolutely. He starts from that position. I'm different. I started from a position from going, I don't know. I just don't know, right? I know that Black people played the greatest part. I know that there's all sorts of influence, but I want to know exactly what's going on, because I have got other things I've noticed that actually, for me, places a greater... it gives you a greater respect of Black people once you get rid of this narrative and start to look what actually was done within jazz by the geniuses that we do know, right? And that's what I'm trying to move towards all the time. And I've supported that on my channel so many times, but you can't get there if you've made this statement, which is untrue. It's basically untrue that Black people solely created jazz. If he's going to turn around and say, I never said that, I know white people are involved in it, but it's still Black. It's still Black because of what? Now we're getting into this sort of essential moral attributes being given to races, which is just the beginning of sort of Marcus Garvey, essentialism, separatism. It's all about the Black people being, morally right in all cases, and white people being part of the white supremacy and being morally bad. And if you think I'm going to start agreeing with that one, it ain't going to happen.
He's trying to do that with hip hop. He come up with this narrative, either a 50-50 narrative or a trifecta, where you talk about Caribbeans and Puerto Ricans and Black Americans are responsible for creating hip hop. Now we know that to be a lie.
Not for my little knowledge of hip hop. Predominantly invented by Black people.
Here we have in the UK, Andrew Edwards. He's trying to suggest that jazz should not be referred to as Black American music.
Not true. I don't mind if someone wants to call it Black American music. I've got an issue with Nicholas Payton's agenda that he put on his website. I got a problem with that. I call it Black music. I've called it Black music all my life, and because I'm used to that, I'm not going to stop calling it Black music. And if somebody wants to call it Black music, I will support them in calling it Black music. If then someone assumes that Black people invented jazz and white people weren't involved and Creoles weren't involved, or that Creoles are Black, and this is my biggest issue here, is because I have a respect for the cultures, I know that the cultural viewpoint was different in 1900 than it is to now. Now Creoles are Black. I would say they're Black. We all think they're Black, but it wasn't like that. And the negotiation of that, right, which is down to the rough treatment of Black people in America, the renegotiation of Creoles' status where they had access to certain things and then that taken away, right? That is the thing that creates jazz. And you can't explain that if you are trying to adhere to this rotten ideology, okay? I have never said that. There's no international plot, right? I am not trying to erase black people off this. In fact, I really wanted to show exactly what black people had done, the incredible things they had done in the creation of this music. But no art form is created in a vacuum. It's impossible. It's always about cultural, what's the word? Fusions. It always is. Right, but more importantly, the geniuses that create jazz, they think different. They think different to the group. You have to understand that. This is not a group mentality at all.
Rather, he offers the same type of explanation. He suggests that it was a combination of different groups.
Of course, because everything is.
Which are mixed race people, and Black Americans. He's saying that this is not a pure African American creation.
There's no such thing as pure.
That people refer to
unless you're some sort of Ku Klux Klan race essentialist. There is no such thing as pure, especially when it comes to Black Americans. Especially when I find this insulting because my family's mixed race. I'm mixed race. This idea of purity, pure culture all the time, it just sounds dodgy to me. Right? And I'm the one getting accused of being the racist here. That sounds dodgy. Does it not sound dodgy to you to keep using the international plot, purity, trying to take this off the black people, blah, blah, all this nonsense?
Jazz as Black American music. So both of these individuals are going out of their way to try to paint a different narrative. And for me, that narrative is clear. There's no such thing as Black American music. This is the goal. One genre at a time. Andrew is going to deal with jazz.
Right. This just is it's so not nuanced. The blues, right? Let's say the blues has got far more African American elements in it than jazz has. Anybody could use their ears and hear that. Right, once we get into this 20th century and black genius musicians start to do what they can do, we definitely have music forms of the 20th century I have no problem with calling black. Funk is black music. Playing with the groove is black music. I listed all of these things in the video. I said all this. What it is that they are treating me like some white supremacists, right? Based upon the fact that I will accept all this stuff and then one little thing that I won't accept, right? One little thing, and then suddenly I am just dropped into this camp of trying to erase what black people have done, right? I've done nearly 1,000 videos on my channel, right? Where I have championed the geniuses of Louis Armstrong, of Duke Ellington, of James Brown, of Miles Davis. I mean, do I have to list them all? Of Herbie Hancock, of all of them. And every time I've done it, I haven't mentioned their race. I have let their brilliance sit as a thing in itself. Of course, I've mentioned the fact that they're black or what the cultural, their own personal history. All that means of things, but it's different for every single person. Right? So if you want to understand truth and understand what's actually going on, you need to be able to sit back and see where this nuance exists and not to be trying to push this. I am not the one with the agenda. As soon as somebody came up and said, there was this group of black people in New Orleans in 1875. It was this bloke, this bloke, this bloke, this bloke. They invented jazz. Look, it's here. Okay, brilliant. That's it. So then I would adjust my point of view because I can. I haven't got an agenda. I can adjust my point of view based upon the truth. Right? I really do not have any agenda. And you could see I don't because I'm so annoyed that he's making out. His pushback is non-existent here. There's no actual evidence, right? I do an hour video with photographs and dates and everything. And he has this circular argument. And that's all we're going to get here, right? But I'm not the one with the agenda, am I?
As Dr. Cologne is going to deal with hip-hop. The goal is to create this narrative that there is no such thing as Black American music. It's just purely
no, there is Black American
Americanism.
music, but jazz is not one of those. It's different. It's a different amount.
It's about appropriation. I think people who are not foundational Black Americans are probably tired of being accused of appropriating.
No, we're not tired of being accused of appropriating. We're tired of being browbeaten by this ideology that's got nothing to do with black people. It's got everything to do with critical theory, postmodernism, Foucault, Derrida, right? Critical race theory, intersectionality, right? Which is a philosophy. Right, it's a philosophy, and with philosophies you could agree with them or not, but with this one, if you don't agree with it, then you're heretical. And some of the people who are spouting this haven't even read the philosophy that they are spouting, so they do not understand. This guy here is pure critical theory, and that went through into sort of Maoism, and he probably doesn't know that, and he doesn't understand what he's saying. Right, he doesn't understand that his stance is not. He probably thinks he's in a higher moral position for having this stance, but this is the stuff the Ku Klux Klan is based upon, that Nazism is based upon, which communism is based upon. It's identity politics.
Just imagine it being Black American. Think about the pride you feel knowing that the music that most of the world loves comes from you.
Right, so this is this circular argument. You know, if you're a black person, you have this pride because you know all the music comes from you. And then somebody comes along and says it doesn't come from you. But I've said it does come from you. On that video, I actually showed the black bands that invented jazz, the black musicians that were involved in it. I showed it, right? But having pride in what your ancestors did, right? Think about it. Either white people bad, black people good. All the things black people did in the past are good. All the bad stuff in the past that white people did was bad, right? Then you could have some pride, I suppose. It would be more like arrogance to me. It would, you know, but you could say I'm pride in what my people have done if you want to have that sort of group allegiance. To me, I know that every single group has done but good and bad stuff. So I can't see how you can have any pride in what people have done in the past. You can have pride in what individuals have done, right? You can have pride in that. But the thing is, there's more than just the identity group of black, right? So when I look at certain jazz musicians, because I'm a musician and I identify far more with being a musician than I do being a white guy, right? Like, forgetting the fact that my mom's Indian, let's just kick her out of it because they don't seem to respect that. So, Mom, I'm sorry, you know, you're white, so she can go and get lost. So it's like you're asking me I'm supposed to be ashamed of my white ancestry, even though the white people actually have murdered some of my direct ancestors that are far more closer to me than the slaves were to these guys. Right? There's no logic in this. But fundamentally, pride. Pride in what? In your blood, in your genes, or what? Pride in what? Culture. You pride in the culture. The proud at the fact that the culture is pure. Is that what we really have here?
And if you're not foundational Black Americans and you love that music, it has to be a little bit frustrating that whenever you perform the music or sing like Black Americans, or, you know, you might be accused of appropriating. They want to abolish that feeling.
Yeah, and I don't blame them. Not for me. But if you're a British black jazz musician playing jazz and you've been brought up into the British black and you feel an allegiance to this music, right? And then somebody turns around and says, no, you're not really a part of it, right? Because you're not foundational Black American. Oh, you're going to get that. You know, because if you logically follow this down, you're getting into this is just fascism. And I can't believe no one can see. Think of the logic of where this is going. Right? Think of the logic of it. Okay? Think of how black British jazz musicians feel. Right? Because they are black and maybe they do have some sort of sense of kinship with other black people around the world, right? And they look at that, and maybe they have some pride that that black people were able to prove their genius in the realm of jazz, but that's denied as well, because there's a general aspect to this that I will wholeheartedly support, right? And it is looking at the individuals and saying, look at Charlie Parker. That guy was a genius, an absolute genius, right? And that gives a lie to anything that any racist will say about black people, because look at the example. That I will champion to the end degree. But this race hustling, no. No.
So they're trying to figure out a way to make black American music just American music.
It needs to be, this conversation can't be broken down.
Now remember, my face is on this video. I do not know who these people are. I do not know what they're talking about. I have no interest in what they're talking about. Right? And is this being used as evidence? I'm just going to talk over this. I cannot believe this. Is this just being used as evidence against me and my position? Am I being linked to this? And why am I being linked to this? Because of the colour of my skin? Is that why I'm being linked to these people who I don't know? Who are talking and arguing about what I don't know? Okay? And you've got to remember, all the way through this, I've had people talking to me and they've brought hip-hop up. And they've said, you're a white British person, you don't know anything about hip-hop. I've worked in hip-hop, albeit very slightly at a very low level. And I've been involved with documentaries, albeit at a very removed level, that have looked at the history of hip-hop in the UK. And it is not what you think. There are specific facts. There is a much stronger history of hip-hop being created in the late 70s here in the UK. Right? So what's going on here now? We've got the adverts, haven't we? Because that's what this really is about, isn't it? It's about all of us making a bit of money on the views, isn't it? Let's turn him back up.
If you saw a European, an Asian, or a Latino singing like black Americans, that would be rare. But thanks to the internet, people have access to black culture and black music. They can study it.
Yeah, it's like
they can transcribe it.
This is a circular argument, isn't it? So he works from the point of view that it is like set in stone that if you sing a certain way, that is black. Now I would agree with that. You know, if somebody sings like the lineage that comes from Bessie Smith, Billie Holiday, through to all those soul singers up through to Mahalia Jackson, Aretha Franklin and Tina Turner, Shaka Khan, blah blah blah, and all those singers, and I love all those singers. They're black singers, right? I would say, if I heard someone singing who was white like that, I'd go, they have a really black sounding voice, because I'm pointing at those people. I can say, yeah, that sounds like so and so. And really, when it comes to female singing, the two huge game changers, Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday. All right. And there's those two sounds in, and I would call that black, right? Because I can point to it. Now, the thing here, and I really want to start to get into this, is when we go back to early jazz, pre-original Dixieland Jazz Band, we start to listen to some of that stuff. It doesn't have that sound. It doesn't have that black sound that I recognise. I'm a drummer. I've been trying to make my drum sound black since I was 12 years old. I recognised it at 12 years old that there was a difference in sound. There was a groove thing. You know, that's something I recognised, right? But this is not, these are not... This is an artistic reaction. It's not a factual reaction. But that artistic reaction, if I go back and listen to James Europe, or I go and listen to sort of the Creole bands like the New Orleans Creole group that recorded at the same time as the original Dixieland Jazz Band, the original Dixieland Jazz Band sound more blacker than some of the black bands. Right? Now that could be because they're dirt and rotten white people and they just copied it all off the blacks. Or it could be that there was a negotiation going on. And then when we get into the 20th century and there was the motivation of some money to be made, right? Genius musicians like Jelly Roll Morton, Sidney Bechet, but most importantly, Louis Armstrong, came in and forged a sound that was so incredible that it came from them. This is why Charlie Parker sounds black, but he doesn't sound anything like Louis Armstrong. Right? Think about it. What makes Charlie Parker's music black? Right? Nothing. It's the genius. And then, of course, in a racist world, people look around and go, look, all these genius musicians, aren't they amazing? You know why? Because they've got innate talent. The noble savage trope comes in, which this guy is peddling unknowingly all the time. Genius musicians like Bessie Smith, like Billie Holiday, like Louis Armstrong, like Duke Ellington, created 20th century black music. And we can point to it, not because of a sort of Genesis story, but because of a marketing story. And it goes there because of racism. Because of racism, right? I've taught all over the UK. You go into a rural British town and everyone's listening to white rock. You then go into the urban towns and everyone's listening to hip hop, or now they listen to grime and all this type of stuff. I've seen this all my life. That is really what's going on. It's not what this guy is going on at all. It's just not true.
Take your time, learn the essence and the flavor of what we do. And then now, it doesn't matter where you go around the world, you can find people who are sounding like us. Let's be clear.
Circular argument. Has anyone explained this to you? It's called a circular argument.
That come pretty close. And what's unfortunate, because I remember I talked about appropriation, they want to be able to sing that way without being accused of appropriating.
This is the guy that said to me, you don't understand the difference between influence and creativity, right? So the black people, when they were taking all the things that you've listed as being European in jazz, that was an influence, right? It wasn't appropriation. They just took those things and they turned it into something new. But when jazz now goes out and people hear black singers or they hear a certain groove a certain way, all you hear things like, say, Fela Kuti and that different type of sound, right? When you, as white people, are influenced by that, that's appropriation. But the fact that jazz groups are playing clarinets and snare drums and cornets and reading Western music with Western intonation and Western harmony and Western arrangements and Western melodies and all the things, that wasn't appropriation. And the reason for all this is because this guy is working from a very simple ideology. Black equals good, white equals bad. It has to be. If he's not, then he's making a big philosophical mistake here.
That's not Black American singing style. That's the way we sang it. You know, why you put
after a certain point, that's what happens.
The whole objective is to make Black American music just American music.
I'm 60. Black don't quit. What is your take, Stephanie? Because I mean, especially from an artist that has.
Now this is supposedly evidence that I'm wrong.
Part of you as the diva, What is your take on the state of music right now in our climate?
I think they want R&B, but they don't want it from us.
They want
it. It's over. They want it from Adele and Justin Timberlake and those people. They don't want it from us. Because when you make an album and it's beautiful, or someone else makes an album, Kenny Lattimore had a wonderful album, and we heard nothing of it. And there's
this lady is completely right. People make Michael Jackson out to be a freak because he turned himself white. But in 1979, when he did Off the Wall, right, he was the biggest black artist in the world, and that wasn't enough for him, and I don't blame him. He wanted to be the biggest artist in the world, and he had to pull in Eddie Van Halen and try and get that rock audience, and he had to get on MTV, and he knew he had to turn himself into a white person. This is the history of 20th century popular music. We would rather hear what black people have done from a white person, right? There is nobody around who will argue this any more than me. I understand this history pretty well, and this lady is saying something, but she is not saying anything about appropriation. She is saying the business would rather hear it from Justin Timberlake, right? That's always been the case. Okay, and the reason for that is not because of some huge white supremacist thing. It's from a pretty ugly thing, but I'm afraid it's biological. Is that people like people that things that they hate otherness, and they like things that they recognise. Right, black people are exactly the same. So they may love all the things that Shaka Khan did. And, you know, they may think she's brilliant. But on a subconscious level, they'd rather have a white person singing like that than a black person. Because it's closer to home and they recognise it. And you have to fight against that. And the only way to fight against that is with colourblindness. That's the only way. That doesn't mean you ignore race. Or everything I've been talking about on my channel is about race. I've been going into in detail. But the ideology that I come back to is at certain points, at these crucial points where the racism is about to happen, you have to go colourblind. And that's what this woman's talking about.
So do you feel that the industry is trying to muffle us, and it goes back to social appropriation? Do you think that they're taking bits and pieces of what we are that makes us great, and then they're wanting to encapsulate that, but they're not wanting the skin?
They don't want to show the respect of where it comes from. You know, that's why when you see...
And that's my point. Everybody loves...
Right, and the thing is he shuts her off. As soon as he gets what he needs is when she says where it comes from. But we're talking about Justin Timberlake, and where he's coming from is black specific musicians that we can point to. But he hasn't, and nobody can provide that for the genesis of jazz. It's a different thing. It's a different thing. I tried my best to do it on the video because I know it's lacking, because this identity narrative that has and this has been financially boosted up through the National Endowments of the Arts and that funding that emerged in the 1980s and all the millions of pounds that was put into that Ken Burns jazz documentary to sell the idea of black American music and black classical music, because there's funding there for that. Right, and in America, you have an incredible class system. They say they don't. You know, we have one here, but they do. And there's educated elite people, and there's people at the bottom of the pile who want to vote for Trump. Right, that's what you've got over there. Right, and race plays a part in it, but it's not the whole part. And there's blacks at the bottom of the pile, and there's blacks at the top of the pile. And the blacks at the top of the pile, this is the conversation that we're getting, because it's about power. This is about controlling the narrative to gain power. Right? And everybody's doing it. You know, white people, we probably invented it. But I can't go back and find the actual white person that did it. But if you want me to claim that, you know, yeah, all right, then you have the jazz. Right, now, this here is, I'm joking now. This is what I do as well. These people do not understand. So I won't go down that. I won't crack those jokes, because they won't get it, will they? And the reason why they won't get it is because they're seeing everything as a heresy. Right, this is 15 minutes. I've done 30 minutes. I don't want to give this guy any more... I just don't want to get... What sticks in my throat is that this video's had 19,000 views. It's having more views than the videos I'm doing, because my lot aren't interested in this stuff. They want me to talk about prog and stuff like that, right? And the thing that's really galls me is the reason I'm doing it is from moral reasons, not from financial reasons. But this guy, every time I'm doing one of these, he's rubbing his hands together because he knows he's going to get the... you know, he's going to get the views. And normally if I did that, I would put the link. I can't see, this is turning into a pathetic game. You know why? Because somebody's decided to come out and approach this with this sort of separatist, aggressive, you know, let's stick Andy's picture on the... let's put a Union Jack or put Tower Bridge behind him, you know. And I sit there as someone who's had my upbringing working within black music here in the UK, working in dance music and all that, working with a lot, always having an allegiance to that, never really feeling comfortable with all the sort of rock music that was around me growing up, and then being drawn to that, being drawn towards jazz, and also having a mixed race family. Of course, I'm as white as I'm as white as this here. Nobody goes around and says Andy's mixed race, right? But I got members of my family that's not the case, and so I'm very aware of these things. We're all a mixed. You know, when Marcus Garvey turned around and said that mixed race people were mongrels, we're all mongrels, Garvey. We're all mongrels. Now, sod off and go back to your chat with your Ku Klux Klan. I've been told that I'm disrespectful to black people for criticising Marcus Garvey. Right? That I don't understand the context. I don't understand the context of him calling my family and my mother a mongrel. There's a context that makes that okay. From the identitarians that will jump on you if you do anything. If you make an hour-long documentary that explains the history of slavery, where it comes from, how African music works, lists all the things in jazz that comes from African music, whilst an African group is playing in the background, which is against my actual beliefs, because I actually think there's less African music in than I actually said, right? That lists every single black musician I could find pre-Buddy Bolden, that I could find, every single one. Right, to try and make the case against myself, right, so that it academically stood up. We don't see any evidence here. That all this guy had to do was come out and say, here's the evidence, Andy, you're wrong. But we don't. What we get is this eternal circular argument that, Andy can't be right. Look, I've proved it, jazz is black. It's pretty obvious. Why? Everyone knows it is. Well, black people know it is.
Us black
let's
black people.
So
they want to be able to sing.
Oh God, I've just forwarded through.
Like you, act like you.
He's now gone to my comments. Right, I won't be doing this in the video, by the way. I'm not going to go to these guys' comments. I don't play that below the belt.
Very comfortable with the pause.
You're getting double adverts here. I'll try and cut this out anyway.
All right, check this out. Me and Andy have been having a back and forth for a period of time when I came out with my video to counter his video about jazz not being referred to as Black American music, right? And so what I like to do sometimes is just engage people further to kind of really feel where they're coming from.
Before we get into this, I'd just like you to know that I get 500,000 views a month, right? The comments, I haven't got a clue, but I usually average around about 500 comments. I try and get through them as much as I possibly can. I will spend every day around about 2 to 3 hours answering comments. So these comments are not what he's got, where he's focused on my argument. I have got like 10 of these are going up at the same time. So when I write this, right, it's like this, this, and this. Now, I'm confident that I'm going to be perfectly happy with everything I've said here because I know that I'm coming from a good place. He might not think I am, but I know that I am. So let's see what I said here.
Because sometimes you could say something in a video, but when you're confronted face to face, well, in this way, comment to comment, you sometimes...
This is the court outro. Andy seemed reasonable on the video, but when you really look, he's a racist. And here's the proof, because he made a comment.
Where that blues is foundational to jazz, this was his comment. Because I said, blues was created by Black Americans. No question about it. It's a Black American creation.
I would go with that.
Blues is foundational to jazz. So this is what he writes back. He says, the blues and the church music, again, are fusions. What we're talking about is black fusions of all cultures fusing with white and Creole fusions of all cultures. So right there, he's saying that the blues is a fusion of white culture.
No, that is, I have him there. Right, I did not say it was a fusion of white culture, and I can prove it. I said what we are talking about is black fusions. The blues is black fusions. Black people fusing from all cultures, fusing with white and Creole cultures. I call it black fusions, and he twists it to white fusions, right? He has an agenda to prove to me, right? The blues, and this is how objective I am, and he's not. He'll go, jazz is black music. The blues is black music. Hip hop's black music. The blues is more black. If you want to get into this pathetic game, it's more black than jazz is. Right, and the blues, the popularity of the blues, which comes from W.C. Handy, Jelly Roll Morton, a whole bunch of people, that's in the 1910s that starts to happen. And we see jazz musicians that are playing essentially marching music in the 10s starting to play blues. Now, Buddy Bolden, we don't have much evidence about, but Buddy's input into jazz could well have been bringing the blues in. I doubt it very much because he is one there was a whole bunch of people, and you're assuming that the blues came in through that route, right? I don't think it did. I think he was playing loud and he was playing stuff to get people to go to funerals, and I cannot see how someone's sticking their trumpet out their window and going, you know, doing that. They would have been going, and, you know, come on, it's a funeral, everybody out there. So, but this is all imagination. There's nothing wrong with that. This guy does it all the time. He imagines stuff. I imagine stuff. These are stories that we can say. None of this can be used as solid ground. It's interesting to take the stories. But this guy is misrepresenting me. I sit here all night being misrepresented in what I'm saying continually.
Right, let's go on. He says, I'm not focused on ancestry because I always accuse him, like Cologne is always focusing on, well, there were Puerto Ricans here, there were Caribbeans here. This is what Andy does. He always points out, too, there were Europeans around and there were Creoles around, so it can't be black culture alone. So these are the similarities. I'm just pointing out these similarities.
No,
He
totally.
says, I am focused on culture, he says, too.
Yeah, and why did I say that?
Claims, for example, when you use we...
Right, so he just hasn't understood what I've said, because in the previous comment, he says you're too focused on ancestry, in other words, genes, because I was going about the percentage that black Americans are actually not black, and how, you know, most Americans share that ancestry that was in slavery because the genes are so spread out. I was saying that, so, and that's down to them making that point. And then I said here, I am not focused on ancestry. I'm focused on culture too. That jazz is a mixture. Why did it happen in New Orleans? What was so special about New Orleans? Oh, it was a melting pot of cultures. But the blacks ignored that. It just happened to be a melting pot of cultures. What a load of rubbish. I am not focused on ancestry. I am focused on culture too. But the claims, for example, when you use we, are ancestral claims. Because this guy's going, when we invented jazz. And that, to me...
Our ancestral claims, basically he's saying, when I say that jazz is black, he says, how could that be?
No.
In a sense. How can a black American who has never listened to jazz claim ownership over a white person who has lived, eaten, and breathed jazz? Now, doesn't that sound familiar?
It sounds familiar because it's morally right. It's morally right. Okay? Because there's not just culture, there's personal experience. Okay? And I would say, so I'm giving an extreme example, if a white person was brought up in New Orleans, in the jazz world, by black people, and had jazz put down them, they have a different stake in terms of ownership of jazz, right, than a white person that has never listened to jazz. Okay, that seems perfectly reasonable. A black American who has never listened to jazz has more ownership over that because of the colour of their skin and their genes than somebody who's lived, eaten and breathed jazz.
That's Cologne when it comes to hip hop.
Yeah, because that it's not just one thing.
Despite the fact that you're black, and despite the fact
circular argument,
hip hop is black American culture.
There we go. You see, circular argument.
That you're not jazz.
Yeah, if you don't never listen to jazz, if you've never listened to jazz, if you don't like jazz, if you don't know what jazz is, right, you have got less. Because what does this ownership mean? Having say over it? Having an opinion about it? There is no real ownership of it. You can't own jazz. All you can do is have an opinion. You can say something. That is it. Right? There's no... You could take pride in it. Someone who has learnt to play jazz. Someone who has learnt to play like Charlie Parker and has spent the 10,000 hours mastering bebop can feel proud that they can play bebop. That the music that was created by those bebop musicians, they can feel some more pride in jazz than some black American who's never listened to jazz, which is most black Americans.
Says, I was hearing Ella and Duke. And the rest in the cot. I guess that means his home.
No, the cot does not mean my home, because there is more to the world than just America. A cot in the crib has got a different meaning here. The cot is the actual name of the thing you sleep in when you're a baby. Right? That is my culture.
All day, every day.
That is my culture.
Like Randy It's my culture.
That is my culture. Right, it's like he has tried to deny my ancestry, my mother's ancestry. He's tried to deny everything about me. And when I say that I'm a British white guy that's mixed race, that blah blah blah, I grew up hearing Ella and Duke and all of that when I was in the rest of the cult, in the cot. That was my upbringing. That was my culture. It was. And then he says,
but they are not directly equitable, he says.
And not equitable,
and
equatable.
Then, of course, music creation, let's go to the next part, and appreciation is based upon 3 factors, he says.
But this is just scientific fact now.
Inheritable traits, culture, and personal history. That means if you haven't done it, you can't claim it.
No, it doesn't mean that at all.
Personal history is by far the biggest factor, he says. If jazz belongs to anyone, it is those that love jazz.
And that there, I think, is a beautiful comment. If I had a birthday card and it said, if jazz belongs to anyone, it is those who love jazz, I go, oh, that's a nice sentiment, isn't it? But this guy does not like that sentiment. Now, those watching this video now, please, in your heart of hearts, which is the uglier of these 2 opinions? Please think about it. Which is the uglier? Because we're talking about aesthetics here.
So, for example, people, you black people, if you never listened to jazz or never played an instrument in a jazz band, you can't claim jazz.
No, you can't.
According to him.
Yeah. But what is wrong with that? Now, my phone's just said about it's going to run out of power, and this is on the batteries. It's going to run out of power. So I am not finishing this on because I'm going to have to go now. I've done 3/4 of an hour on this. So anyway, thanks for watching this video. I may come back to this because I did actually quite enjoy that because I got some sort of catharsis. I've actually been able to finally say my opinion properly about this nonsense. But if you did like it, put a like on it, subscribe. If you want to follow me on Patreon, you can, or you can put some money in the old tip jar. Don't go and watch his video. You've seen it here. You're just going to give him extra views. All right. And this is a joke. Thank you. See ya.